Welcome to this short introduction to the life and work of Eric Thiman and to the work of the Eric Thiman Collection. Let us start with some music. When the Eric Thiman Collection was launched at Minster in October 2014, there was a lunchtime recital and a special evensong to mark the occasion. The anthem, I Praised the Earth, was the anthem at that evensong, and I think it's a particularly good piece. It is one of a set of 3 choral songs of praise, which is sometimes programmed as a set in concerts. This recording is not the Minster Choir, but the St Michael's Singers. Eric Thiman, 1900 to 1975, was an organist, teacher, conductor and prolific composer. His fame has rather faded today, but he was very well known in his lifetime, regarded as the leading musician for the nonconformist churches in the country, and with a fame which, I guess, is rather the equivalent of John Rutter's today. We know of well over 1,300 published pieces. A measure of his output compared to other people is the British Library Catalogue. There are more Thiman scores held there than there are for Parry, Howells, Walton or Rutter, and about 5 times as many as the scores of his close friend Harold Darke. Born in 1900, Thiman went to Caterham School, but after that he was largely self-taught. He was publishing pieces from his teens, and he passed his organ fellowship when he was only 21. He was awarded a D.Mus of London University at 27, the youngest person at that time to get that qualification. I believe this photo was taken about that time. He went on to become Professor of Harmony at the Royal Academy of Music for over 40 years, and he was much loved in this role. The Academy is very supportive of the Thiman Collection, not least because they were bequeathed all the Thiman royalties, which of course still run today. Thiman also became chair of the music faculty at London University. Thiman was an organist for the whole of his professional life, firstly at the Park Chapel in Crouch End, North London, for 30 years. The Park Chapel, incidentally, has since found use as a recording studio and has belonged to both Eurythmics and to David Gray. Subsequently, he was organist for 20 years at the City Temple Holborn Viaduct in central London, known as the Cathedral of the Free Churches. Both churches had thriving choirs, and a professional quartet led the choir at City Temple. Soprano Leslie Garrett was a member of this quartet when she was young. He was an examiner for the Royal College of Organists and the Associated Board, and a frequent adjudicator at music festivals. He was a prolific composer in an approachable, middle-of-the-road style, comparable, say, to Harold Darke or Charles Wood. When he died in 1975, at the age of 75, he was still working as teacher, organist, composer and conductor. He was a very quiet, kind and self-effacing man, as lots of his ex-pupils testify, but equally was driven to achieve in lots of areas. All this was only possible due to his wife Madeleine, a musician and singer, who saw it as her life's work to support him. They had no children. In this picture you can see Thiman with Madeleine and her sister Kathleen between them. So now a little about the background to the setting up of the collection. Firstly, my own connection to Dr. Thiman more than 40 years before becoming his archivist. Before university, I was in the choir of St. Peter's, Grange Park in North London, incidentally the only church in the country to be opened during World War II. Apparently Churchill attended the consecration. And then for 15 months I was the organist and choir master there. Several people in the church choir, including several who've remained close friends, and one who is now my ex-wife, were also part of a large choral society in the area, the Elysian Concert Society, and Thiman was their conductor. I sang with this choir for 3 or 4 years and was still associated with the choir when Thiman died suddenly in 1975. I sang in the memorial concert. Meanwhile, Thiman's brother Cedric was head of languages in Nottingham High School, and his daughter Frances, the composer's nearest living UK relative, still lives in Nottingham. She and Paul Hale, then rector chori at Southwell Minster, the cathedral for Nottinghamshire, hatched the idea of an archive, and I later suggested that I might look after it, and was luckily funded to do so. All of Thiman's own music, dozens of boxes and bags of it, had passed via Mrs. Thiman to Thiman's younger colleague Gerald Barnes, who was glad to pass it on into safe hands and free up his attic. Following the refurbishment at the Archbishop's Palace in Southwell, the new Paul Hale Choir Library opened in September 2014, and the Thiman archive moved into that. The following month, the Eric Thiman Collection was launched with a concert in the Minster. Lots of former colleagues and pupils of Thiman came. There was a small exhibition in the State Chamber, pictured here. The main aim of the Thiman Collection is to collect copies of all of his works. We currently have 1,258 different pieces, and there are about another 70 or 80 known pieces still to find. We also aim to encourage renewed interest in his music through supporting performances and recordings. We recorded a CD of his music in 2016. The recordings you hear as part of this talk are all from that CD. We have also helped people with academic and performing interest in the music. There's a PhD research student at Bristol incorporating Thiman into his work, and 2 United States academics are planning visits to the collection. One of them is a published author who plans to write a book on Thiman. Thiman would have regarded playing and writing for the organ as central to his life. He published over 110 organ pieces, mostly aimed at the reasonable amateur performer rather than the recitalist. Many are still in print. Here's a recording of a pleasingly tuneful piece, the Scherzetto for two flutes. That's two flutes, as in organ stops rather than real flutes. This is a rare work for which we actually have the manuscript. Thiman clearly threw his manuscripts away, as there are only a handful surviving. But this one was a late work, and the manuscript was still with the publisher when he died, and therefore ended up in his papers. This is played by Cheltenham-based organist John Wright. He's playing the organ at the church where we made the recording in 2016, the Priory Church of Deeping St James, near Stamford in South Lincolnshire. I have mentioned that Thiman wrote mainly with amateurs in mind, including large numbers of pieces of educational piano music, many of which found their way onto the Associated Board Grade exam syllabus. Occasionally, though, he wrote for full-blown professionals, such as the Suite for two pianos for Harry Isaacs and York Bowen, both well-known concert pianists at the time and colleagues of his at the Academy. He wrote loads and loads of other useful music, including lots of unison, two-part and three-part songs for music festivals. Many people who were at school in the 40s, 50s and 60s will have sung some of these without noting the composer, no doubt, if they were in their school choirs. There were also some songs published under the name Eric Harding. Harding was his middle name. These were early works, either in a sort of Ivor Novello style or occasionally rather excessively nationalistic, including the very strange song When the Kaiser Gets to Paris, published in 1916. I originally doubted that he could have had a piece published when he was only 16 years old, but we have a copy, and the copyright date is definitely 1916, and indeed the text is an attempt, not a very good one, at wartime propaganda. Some songs, however, were written specifically as solos, in this case for very good amateurs or professionals. The style is rather like Roger Quilter or Michael Head. Many of these more serious songs remain in repertoire. The Stainer and Bell volume of 13 of them has stayed in print for the 45 years since his death, and there are many YouTube videos of people singing his songs. An interesting reflection provoked by these YouTube examples is that Thiman seems to be remembered slightly better in the USA than he is here. The piece we're going to hear now is one of these solo songs. It's in the Stainer and Bell book, though we're going to hear it sung by a children's choir. When we made the 2016 recording, we included some songs performed by the Eric Thiman Singers, which is the junior choir of Caterham School in Surrey, Thiman's own school. Here they are performing Thiman's lovely Madonna and Child. Thiman was also a respected and frequent conductor. He had his own string orchestra for a period, and there are some tickets in the archive for a concert with the Eric Thiman String Orchestra and soloist Isabel Bailey, one of the most famous sopranos of the mid-20th century and a frequent singing partner of Kathleen Ferrier. He also conducted Purley Choral Society and the aforementioned Elysian Concert Society for many years, and for most of his life he was associated with the Massed Choirs Festival of the Free Church Union at Alexandra Palace, at first as organist and latterly as conductor. He wrote many choral works, sacred and secular, including Christmas pieces, many with full orchestral accompaniment. A notable piece to mention is Ring Out Ye Crystal Spheres, which was sung at his memorial concert and indeed at the launch concert for the collection. It's a good piece, but it could be accused of being his derivative take on Parry's Blessed Pair of Sirens. It's about the same length, it's bombastic and tuneful, varies between 4 and 8 parts. You can perform it with organ or orchestra. It's in E-flat and with the text by Milton. All of these things are true of Blessed Pair of Sirens too. There is also a cantata called The Last Supper. Many of you will have sung Stainer's Crucifixion. The Last Supper is a workable alternative to this, for soloists, choir and organ with congregational hymns. In my mind, a better alternative to the Crucifixion than Maunder's Olivet to Calvary, which is often programmed. Let's listen now to one of his more substantial choral pieces, a setting of the Te Deum for choir and organ. This is a piece which can be sung as part of matins or as a concert piece, and it was the longest piece we recorded on our 2016 CD. The picture here is of the St Michael Singers at the recording session in Deeping St James. Church choral music was inevitably a very important part of his output. As per his own church employment, he wrote mainly for the nonconformist churches. Indeed, textbooks and articles refer to him as the foremost 20th century composer for the nonconformists. He edited Congregational Praise, the hymn book for the Congregational Church worldwide, in 1951. There are over 140 published anthems, many of them simple hymn anthems, but many more complex and representing a huge variety of mood and text. He wrote settings of just about every famous English anthem or hymn text you can think of. Children of Jerusalem, Christ is the world's light, Christ the Lord is risen again, Christ who knows all his sheep, Christ whose glory fills the skies, come Holy Ghost our souls inspire, come let us join our cheerful songs, come thou Holy Spirit come, come ye faithful raise the strain, and that's just the ones beginning with C. Here is an anthem with words that you will be familiar with, Fight the Good Fight. This is what's known as a hymn anthem, not just because the words come from a hymn, but because each verse is a variation on the same tune. The tune is of course original, rather than the standard hymn tune, though Thiman did write some hymn anthems based on pre-existing tunes. This is a good example of a piece by Thiman that, although it is out of print, is very much still worth performing and very distinctive. Incidentally, if you enjoyed hearing this music and would like to hear more of it, there are a few of the Thiman CDs still available for sale, $12.50 plus $1.50 for post and packing. Just click the relevant link on the welcome page of the website for more details. Let's return to the CD for the final piece of music. Here is one of his more well-known two-part songs, a setting of Byron's She Walks in Beauty, again sung by the Eric Thiman Singers from Caterham School.